All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Today I have Harry, also known as the Rideshare guy. Harry, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be on your channel, Tanner. I watched a lot of your videos. I've seen you in your hotel room, and now I feel like I'm there with you.
Always in the hotel room, yeah. And so is my cat. She's loving it. She's running around like crazy right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Harry, I think I discovered your channel based on the video with the president. So I think that's probably the hottest topic, and I kind of want to dive into that one right away. So first off,
Sure.
how did you get an interview with the president of DoorDash?
Well, I'm going to make it sound a little simple, but all we did was actually just email their team. I think we just emailed like their generic press at every company has like a press at DoorDash.com, for example, email. And sort of laid out a little bit of a pitch like, hey, here's who I am, here's what we want to talk about. And we actually asked for Tony Shu to come on the podcast and YouTube channel. And I guess he was busy doing bigger things. So we got stuck with the president. Still not a bad get, but,
Not
it
bad.
was simple in that sense. But obviously, I'm sure that they looked into my channel and who we were and all of that. And of course, I'm sure that played a big role too.
Yeah. Yeah, they probably might look at my channel right now and be like, nah, let's not do with this guy right now. At one point, they
Yeah,
probably
I mean,
would
I
look.
think Yeah, no, I mean, I think you'd be surprised, right? Like, I think actually that a lot of the gig tubers out there that are covering DoorDash, for example, I think are very valuable to the company. I mean, in a way, you're sort of like out there, whether, not every video they may be in love with, but I mean, you're covering like what it's like you're kind of doing a lot of their job for them, like helping Dashers. Like most of these channels, I would say, are more positive than negative, more about giving advice, more about giving money. They might have a lot of feedback,
Yeah.
it's oftentimes critical feedback, but I think it is a pretty, powerful tool for these companies. Hopefully they're watching these videos and, taking all these good ideas that you guys have and eventually implementing them.
Yeah. Well, lately it seems like they've been implementing the opposite, but I'm okay with that. I'll
Yeah, well,
figure
I
out
mean,
a
I
way.
think that's a challenge. One thing I like about your channel is that you really treat it like a business owner, and you have to realize, like, working in the gig economy, you are a business owner, and you have to understand that the companies do not have your best interests at heart. I would say that, like, in every industry, right, the employer does not have the employees interests at heart, and there's not a lot of loyalty or love lost from either way, right? Like, drivers and workers can work for multiple services, and the companies can basically, get rid of you or send you really shitty orders. So I think once you understand that it's like, hey, you might feel loyal to this company or you might want to work hard for them, but at the end of the day, like, if they have to get rid of you, if they have to, take advantage of you, they will. And it's not the worst thing in the world, but just once you understand that, I think you can set yourself up for success much better.
Yeah, I think you said it very well. You have to think of it as a business owner, and there's always going to be curveballs thrown at you, no matter what field you're in. It's never going to be like an easy path with roses everywhere. You're always going to have to figure out new
Yeah.
things, and that's why I always try to help people open up their mind to different ways of making money. Because if you can,
Yeah.
like, I mean, what I forget when it was. I think it was when I like got my car valued. I realized I was like, man, I spent so much of my car's value just driving around for DoorDash. I got to make these
Yeah.
miles more worth it. And then I was like, well, shoot, I'm like driving around and then I'm coming home and filming YouTube videos. And then I'm going and sitting in the office for like 5 hours. Why don't I just do it all at one time? And
Yeah.
then I'm going to the gym later. It's like, might as well just do everything all at once. And now my car is my office. Well, I guess my hotel is, but
So now in your car, you can run your YouTube channel, do some squats in between videos, record,
yeah.
and do a few deliveries.
Yeah, most of my videos are me driving to the gym and I just try to get a DoorDash order on the way there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's actually a good strategy. It was one thing I did this experiment once. I've mainly done Uber and Lyft driving. And so I was here in Los Angeles and I did this experiment once where literally anytime I left the house, Uber has this cool feature where you can set a destination. So you only get trips headed in that direction. It usually works pretty well. And you can even set an arrival time. So if you need to be somewhere within an hour, it kind of will let you go a little farther and then get you towards that destination. And it was pretty surprising. Like, I would just be going 20 minutes across town from mid-city to Santa Monica, and I may get one trip. It was only $6, $7 earnings, but it would only take me like 8 minutes out of the way, or let's say 10 minutes out of the way. And if you make $7 in 10 minutes, it's not a ton of money, right? But on
Yeah.
an hourly basis, that's $42 an hour. Now, I'm not making technically $42 an hour right there, but for my time, I was. And I was now deducting those miles for a trip that I was going to take anyways. And I really didn't go that far out of my way. So, I mean, I think those strategies that you talk about and that other gig tubers talk about are important. Not everyone's going to go and implement them, but at least makes you think about it. Like, hey, should I take this job? Should I take this trip? Are there advantage opportunities to take advantage or leverage this other thing that I'm doing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the 4 hour work week was the one that really set in my mind. I was like, man,
Yeah.
get so many things done all while doing DoorDash. Like, why am I just sitting
Yeah.
here like messing around? I should be getting stuff done and like listen to informational books and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, no,
So,
I mean, I think that's one of the cool things about delivery is that, you do have a lot more time to yourself. There's a lot less customer interaction, driving passengers around. They probably don't want to listen to the 4 hour work week on, on tape, right?
probably
On
not.
a podcast, to be honest. They're like, what the hell are we listening to? What chapter are you in right now? Outsource this, outsource that. But I mean, that is one of the cool things about delivery is that you have a lot more opportunity for personal development. And I get it, it's like it's a lot easier and more fun to just like sit there and look at Instagram or Facebook, but maybe it's a combination of the two. Every other trip you might listen to an ebook or something like that. And that's really, I think one of the cool things you talked about, helping people get to start other businesses, or you just did a guest video on my channel that might be interesting, but it's all about like how you basically use your channel and your DoorDash driving to launch businesses and how it helps there. And I think that is one thing that in the gig economy, you have some people that figure it out and they understand like, hey, here's how to make it work and here's how I can keep doing it, and they're happy doing it. But I think for a lot of people, maybe even a majority of people, this is like a temporary thing where they've got bigger, better, different plans. And I think that there's just so much like I'm sure we'll talk about some of the negatives of gig economy and DoorDash in a second here, but I think like as long as you understand like the flexibility component, the positives, like that destination filter I talked about on Uber, as long as you understand how you can take advantage of it, it can really like help get you to the next level in many other areas of life. And that's sort of why I'm such a big fan of a lot of what we do.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest things for me was like I almost feel like I went to college with how many audiobooks I read in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And like I've launched my businesses.
So what's your favorite audiobook? I need a new one.
I'm okay, your next 5 moves is a game changer. I've listened
Mm,
to it 3 times. And that one's by Patrick Bet David, 3 times in the last few months.
very cool.
And that one's just full of like gold mines. It's so
Yeah.
good. Yeah, that guy
All
is a
right.
genius. But his favorite book that he recently read was Blue Ocean Strategy, which is about going from so there's like the red ocean and there's blue ocean. The red ocean is the ocean that's filled with all this competition, and you're trying to find
Mm,
the blue ocean, how you make your business go to the blue ocean where no one else is yet, and you can take full advantage of that whole entire
yeah.
area. So try to create new areas to make money for your businesses
Yeah.
that other people aren't yet.
Yeah, no, that sounds like right up my alley. I love that stuff, not only for my business, but I feel like a lot of these books are good for gig workers too. Like that's what's so cool as a DoorDash, courier. I mean, you're literally running your own business, like we talked about, right? So it's a lot of those similar strategies apply. And I think that's like what the most successful, dashers, for example, right? Like they're kind of like really treating it like a business. They're really treating it like, hey, if every dasher is doing this and they're all making kind of like average pay, I need to be doing something differently, right? To go above the average.
Yeah. Whether it's like doing multiple apps at one time or like balancing other businesses and stuff, you got to make the most of your time because everyone has the same amount of hours in a day.
Yeah.
You really have to try to make the most out of it. So also I wanted to talk about, well, do you have any more like presidents or any other big interviews you've gotten down before?
Yeah, so I actually was fortunate. I've interviewed Uber CEO a couple times. So I interviewed him at a driver event in Los Angeles a few years ago when they launched a new driver app. And then I also interviewed him during the pandemic when they were doing, they were kind of trying to get their message out a lot about like Prop 22 and how they want drivers to be independent contractors. So sort of brought him in and talked a lot about that because I'm sort of known as, more the Uber Lyft guy, right? The expert. We cover some of the food. Well, actually, I guess what I would say is like I think you guys, like yourself and a lot of the other DoorDash gig tubers do a really good job of covering DoorDash and like what's happening on a day-to-day basis and like in the lives. Like we don't really do that. We've got more, tutorials of the DoorDash driver app, more like kind of starter, more beginner content. We've got a course for delivery drivers, but it's not going into like the advanced strategies. On the Uber and Lyft side, we cover a lot more of like the advanced stuff, I guess you would say.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I drove for Uber for about 6 months or so back when it first came out in Los
Mm,
Angeles.
nice.
And it was before they would tell you where you were going and stuff too. So I
Yeah.
would always end up in downtown LA. Like by the end of the night, somehow you always end up in downtown LA.
Yeah. It is funny, like driving in LA, you drive all over the city, but there's always like four areas that you end up in, basically, or we'll touch on at some point. Downtown LA, West Hollywood, Santa Monica, LAX. It's sort of like you end up there no matter what you do.
Yeah, it's almost like every 5 people is going to Hollywood or downtown LA at some point. And I would always start in like Arcadia and then no matter what, end up in downtown LA. And then it
Yeah.
was when someone puked in my car that I was like, this is all fun and games until someone puked in my car. And now I
Switching to
gotta go
DoorDash.
clean
A
and everything.
burrito will never puke in the back of your car, right?
Yeah. But you will get a lot of grease in your passenger seat and stuff.
Yeah.
Pizzas and all kinds of stuff. I suppose I should probably use the hot bag more often, but I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so kind of want to touch on Bentley real quick. Have you seen that video? And what are your thoughts on Bentley's
Yeah.
corporate
Bentley
shill
Coupe.
mentality?
Yeah. You know what? So this guy's been around for a while, right? I mean, I know he's got a lot of subscribers, but it's funny because I feel like he was like, I don't know if he's, well, I'm curious, what you think of him and we can get into his video and his reaction, but I feel like he's like kind of one of the more like older school YouTubers, has kind of been doing it for a while. And then, now with DoorDash, obviously in the past year and a half, has really picked up. And now I think, his channel and like many of your other channels have picked up again. But I mean, I guess just my high level thoughts. I mean, I don't know. I guess you never really want to defend a pay cut, right? I mean, that's basically what he was trying to do is defend a pay cut, lowering the base pay on DoorDash. And, that's why it's sort of, I would say for me, like, I've been doing this now for 6, 7 years. I started my blog 7 years ago. I started my YouTube channel 6 years ago, and pay was a lot higher for Uber and Lyft drivers back then. And over the years, they've cut rates and they sort of like every year they were cutting rates on Uber and Lyft. And like, I think that sometimes it's hard for some of the YouTubers who, once you get 80, 90,000 subscribers, you can make a pretty good full-time living off that. Let's be frank. And so he's probably not dashing much, right? And so I think it's hard to sort of lose touch with reality and be like, it's easier to justify, like what DoorDash is saying or some of the rate cuts that are happening because you aren't as reliant as other people. And so that's why I think is just so tough for people to swallow. Like you never want to basically defend a rate cut. And I think that's what he did. And that's why, so many people like kind of came out with pitchforks and probably rightfully so. And
Yeah.
then I guess he also sort of like double and tripled down on it, which probably wasn't the best thing to do either.
Yeah, I think he just made another video on it too. I have to watch that one, but
I haven't seen that one. I mean, there are a lot of videos and stories people have been sending me, and so I've been watching from afar. But definitely, it is a great way for all the YouTubers to boost up their views and subscribers and all that. I think they all, it's fun to do the reaction and like, hey, man, I'll even say like I've watched a lot more of these videos in the past week because of it. So it definitely gets the views up.
yeah, for sure. The drama is always fun. My only thing is he's kind of like a one-trick pony. Only talks about doing DoorDash, and he kind of plugs people into like the employee mindset when you're not an employee.
Yeah.
And then to do that and also defend the pay cut is kind of weird at the same time.
Yeah.
I feel like either he has like his whole life savings invested into like DoorDash stock,
Yeah.
or he's just so loyal to them because I know I used to have the same amount of subscribers as him at one point.
Mm.
I believe he's just so loyal to them because I believe they shared his video in like the DoorDash community or
Uh,
something like that. And
yeah.
because he went from like 5,000 to like 50,000 real quick.
Hmm.
And I
Interesting.
think they probably like just, I mean, if it wasn't for DoorDash, you wouldn't have the YouTube channel. I mean, it's the DoorDash
Interesting.
diary. So he's loyal to one specific company.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is a possibility. When I interviewed the president of DoorDash, Chris Payne, I mean, one thing that stood out to me was like, man, they've got 2 million dashers right now. So I could totally imagine, if they shared one of Bentley's videos, that was probably like, I'm sure more positive or about the benefits of dashing, that could, yeah, I don't know if it gets them from 5 to 50 in one share, but I'm assuming that, it could have a big impact, right? And I think that actually, when you do get to a certain point, right, like that's a challenge I think a lot of gig tubers, might potentially have in the future. Once you start getting to like, I think like 50,000 subscribers, like once you get to that number, you can make a full-time living off YouTube, and you might not be rich, but I think you can like start, you'll start getting like recognition from DoorDash, right? They might reach out to you and say, hey, we love this last video of yours. Can we share it with our 2 million dashers? And you're gonna be like, it's pretty hard to say no to that
Yeah,
at
for
that
sure.
point, right? Like, hey, free distribution and all that. And then, maybe you release a video in the future that's critical about DoorDash. And then they say, hey, you know what? We weren't in love with the last video. If you want us to share videos in the future, we kind of need you to tone it down a little. And I'm not saying that happens, but I mean, you could very easily see how this plays out. And so I think it's a challenge it's like, for me, it's kind of like we've been doing this for a while. So it's like a fun challenge. Like, hey, how do we be able to run a channel, a business where we can interview the executives of these companies, but at the same time, not every single driver in our audience feels like we're a total sellout? Because there's definitely people, like in the DoorDash president interview I did. And, even when I interviewed Uber CEO, like, of course, especially on YouTube, right? Commenters are a little wild on YouTube.
Oh,
We
they're
get
wild.
commenters, people saying, but Reddit is the worst, right? Reddit, then YouTube, maybe down here. I don't know what they say about me on Reddit, but we can come, oh, Harry, you're a sellout, you're a shill. I'm like, dude, I didn't get paid for this interview. I don't send them the questions in advance. And I get, like, there's always going to be like some people, just no matter what, they're going to be critical. But I think that, like, when a majority of your audience is like, dude, what is going on? This is, this doesn't make sense, or it seems like you've gone too far with this. That's when I think you kind of have to take notice. And one thing for me, I think I mentioned this to you before, is like, if everyone's a little pissed off at me, that's kind of how I know we're doing a good job covering a company or covering an opportunity, right? If DoorDash is like, if we do some content and they're like, hey, you were a little too hard on us right here. And if drivers are like, hey, you took it too easy on them, you know what I mean? You sort of know that, like, if a few people from every constituency or group is kind of pissed at you, I think you know that you're doing a good job, because it is a hard balance and a fine line to walk, just because the bigger you get, the more opportunities you're going to get, the more, it becomes, your full-time income, right? And if you are more reliant on, your YouTube business, for example, than dashing, then it becomes challenging. And then just the last thing I'll add is the one way where I've tried to really stay connected is, like, we obviously use, well, not obviously, but if people have been over to my channel on the Rideshare Guy on YouTube, we use multiple contributors, right? So now I'm focusing a lot of my time on running the business. I still go out and drive and do some trips and things like that here and there, but it's really not me and who I am, because I've been doing this for 7 years. Like, it's kind of, you can only, like you said, right, you can only handle so many pukers in your back seat for seven
Yeah.
years. But we hire contributors, across the country who are doing DoorDash, who are doing Uber. And so, like, when something comes out, it's like I kind of give them free reign to, like, let it fly and, like, really kind of try to keep that connection. So that's sort of like one way that I've tried to maintain that balance.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And so did you start as a blog, or how did you originally start your channel and everything?
Yeah. So I started my blog, therideshareguy.com, in 2014. And then I started a podcast right after that, because it was about, like, signed up driving a ride hail company. And, so I started driving. Time they probably want to listen to a podcast, so I started my podcast, and then I started my YouTube channel like 6 or 9 months after that. And it sort of turned out, actually, that, like, the blog and the YouTube have been the most industry audience. It's more like, less like gig workers that listen to the podcast. We post them also on YouTube, but with video. But like most of the like my actual podcast listeners are more like industry academic media type people that are like observing the industry, and we sort of cover it from the workers perspective there for them.
Nice. Okay, cool. That's awesome. And so how did you have a blog, right? And a subscriber list
Yeah.
as well. And did those come
Yeah.
along? Sorry, because you cut out for a little bit. Did those come on second or?
Oh. Yeah. So basically, I started the blog in 2014, about 7 years ago. Podcast, YouTube channel kind of came after that. So I sort of started it all like 2014, 2015, everything. And then we started building up an email list, for example, on the blog. And so now, we're releasing like an article every day that we email out to people. Like today's Tuesday, we just released a podcast. So I email that out to people, and then we'll put like the audio and the video on our YouTube channel on Friday. So sort of just like grown it kind of like slow and steady over the past 7 years on all of our channels. And viewers would be like the blog. We usually get around like 70 or 80,000 email subscribers. And then on YouTube, we're closing in on 100,000 subscribers there. And I mean, it kind of varies, but like usually we get around 500,000 views a month on YouTube there. We actually have a trucking video.
Let's start over with the trucking video. So you
truck
have
driving video. I'm going to nail it this time.
It's I'm
Yeah.
sure you're nailing it. I just can't hear anything you're saying.
I have a truck driving video.
This is the third
Can you
time
still
we've
not hear
recorded
me,
this,
or
by the
now
way,
you
for
can?
the audience. So third time. Internet's not too good.
Yeah, that's all right. Maybe you get upgraded to the penthouse for your next stay now that you racked up all those points, and get a little better internet for yourself over there.
Yeah, I'm gonna
truck driving video though. So yeah, we normally do maybe 400,000 or 500,000 views on the YouTube channel in total for all our videos every month. And we had this truck driving video kind of go viral, got shared on Reddit, and got up to 3.3. I think it's at 3.3 million views right now. So doing really well. But it's kind of cool because obviously, so we cover a lot of Uber and Lyft driving type content, food delivery, grocery delivery. But then occasionally we go out and do some other. We just did like a Domino's pizza, just providing options. I think of it like two categories, like go and become an employee in the kind of transportation, or if you kind of want to graduate to something different, but using your gig economy skills, sort of like.
Man, you're gonna hate me. My internet's not working again. Hold on. Let me see if my freaking phone will be any better. I got almost all of that recorded though. Does it sound any better, or does it work for you right now?
Yeah, it's working right now.
Well, maybe my phone has better Wi-Fi. We got that whole thing
recorded, okay.
But then you cut out at the end.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, I loved that trucking video. I watched it the other day, and then there was like another one that was like similar too, right?
Yeah,
and
we have a few.
It starts off almost
yeah, we have
the
a
same
few
way,
trucking
right?
videos. Yeah, we've got a few trucking videos. This guy John, who was one of our contributors, he did a bunch of gig economy for a while, all the food delivery, Uber and Lyft, and then he is sort of funny because he was a young guy and he decided to like quit the gig economy and go do truck driving for a couple years. And so I had him do a few videos, and we did a big series on his experience truck driving. So that was a cool feature.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, man, he's really young to be a truck driver. I never pictured truck drivers being so young, but
I think he is one of the younger ones. I think they do tend to skew a bit older for sure.
Yeah, I personally could not ever imagine being a truck driver. That is
a
lot of sitting in the car.
Yeah, I think it's a tough job, but I mean, like if you're a top truck driver who's crazy, listening to John, I mean, he has to start early and work his way up, and it's pretty tough. But I mean, like some of these like really highly desired gigs where you're like, I think they call them regional truckers. So you like start, you basically never really leave like your region of like LA, for example. And if you're working for someone that's like a top company like Walmart, some of these guys are making like 80, 90, 100K a year. It's like a 9 to 5 like trucking job with full benefits and everything, and pretty easy and relatively fun, I guess you would say. It's still a job, but there are some like the cream of the cream opportunities are pretty interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a truck driving YouTube channels. You ever looked into that?
Well, so John actually, I've been really, when his video went viral, I was really encouraging him to start his own YouTube channel, and he actually ended up doing it. So if people are interested in the truck driving, they can check out his channel. It's called Trucking Seriously, and he actually just finally quit his truck driving job. He'd had enough, so he's gonna be doing a lot more content there, and we've kind of partnered up on that. So expect to see more if people are interested in truck driving.
That didn't seem like it lasted too long, right?
He
It's
was
like,
truck driving for a couple years, but that's sort of what's cool about working online. I mean, we talked, there's 2 million dashers, right? And there's this huge community of folks like yourself, Pedro, and these other guys, UDM, all these guys, DDD, right? Like doing basically YouTube content about DoorDash. 2 million dashers. There's actually over 2 million truckers, right? So there's like the same potential audience. I don't know if they're all on YouTube, but like I bet a decent number of them are sitting in their car a lot of the time. They take breaks, they're on their phone. So there are some interesting niches out there where you can go be a YouTuber if you're really interested in something.
hmm. Yeah, now I think about it, it's probably not the right audience, and they're probably less tech savvy like than
Yeah,
we are on our phones all day
yeah,
using it anyway. So I don't think truckers,
yeah.
maybe it's not the
You'd
right.
be surprised though, because like they don't have a lot to do. They're on their phone, right? I mean, maybe it's like YouTube, maybe they're also on Facebook, some of the older platforms, when it does come to social media, like, but I think we definitely, one thing we found is like our blog audience definitely tends to skew older. Like we've got a lot more, older folks that are doing driving or delivery, and they tend to read our blog. And then social, like our social media audience and YouTube is definitely skews younger. So, but if the potential audience is big enough, it doesn't really matter. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And how long did you do your YouTube channel before you were able to make a living off it? Because I always tell my audience, I'm like, you guys should start a YouTube channel. It's like the
yeah,
greatest thing that ever happened to me. Or if you're not a YouTuber, maybe a blog or something like that,
yeah,
so we can make passive income. Because
yeah.
think of that as freedom.
For sure. So I actually really like YouTube right now. If anyone is kind of like just getting started, the thing with the blog is that it's really competitive. It's so easy to start a blog. There's so much competition, and there's just like kind of a lot of ways, not to game the system, but like SEO, search engine optimization is such an important part of building a blog, getting links back to your blog, making sure the content is all optimized, kind of according to Google. And like, I feel like it's sort of like a bit of a, not a scam, but it's like a bit of a, sort of like cheap way to build like the best content on like that ranks in Google is not necessarily the best content. It's the content that's best formatted, has the best tagging, answers the best keywords and questions, right? So like the best article that you would write for a blog might not necessarily rank, versus someone who just kind of knows what they're doing. Whereas with YouTube, there's still some of that SEO and keyword and elements of that, right? But if you're doing really great content and kind of consistently and over time, that will find you. YouTube is also the second biggest search engine, after Google. And the thing too that you can publish a video on YouTube and it can attract a lot of views very quickly if you hit on the right keyword, high volume keyword with low competition. So basically, like if you're picking the right topic and there aren't a million people doing it, people will find you very quickly on YouTube. Whereas with a blog, that really will not happen. And so that's why I'm a big fan of YouTube. And so for me personally, the only thing is like I've sort of thought of everything all as one, like my blog, my podcast, my YouTube. Early days, we were doing like driver coaching. Calls and sessions, and I launch courses and things like that. So I sort of think of it all as one. So it's a little hard, I mean, you've got like the YouTube ad revenue component, but if you're building a YouTube channel, that should really only be 25 to 50%. You also want to be launching things like courses, excuse me, courses, affiliate products. You want to have 2 to 3 revenue streams if you're going to be a full-time YouTuber. But I do think like that 50,000 subscriber number, that's like the point where I think you can really, turn this into a full-time job. But I would even say, like even, a lot of the DoorDash gig tubers, like they have much lower subscriber counts, but you can sort of see that there's a big opportunity there because the views that you guys are getting on your videos are sort of not in line. They're a lot higher than what I would say like the average views per video for like subscribers at a similar level. So I think that sort of shows it's like good opportunity right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I have videos on this on how to like optimize search engine stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of my views from Google actually.
Mm.
And if you like read my like descriptions and my titles, it's usually like the beginning portion is like
Yeah.
what the video is, and then it's like DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, money tips,
Yep.
delivery, driver, like all that stuff. And I just like lay it all in there because I know
Yeah.
that a video with the tag money tips in the title is
Mm-hmm.
going to get about twice the ad revenue as something that doesn't. So
Yeah.
if you look at any video I post, it has money tips in there. And you get all
Yeah.
those guys who are trying to take your money and invest it for you. And like, if you
Yeah.
watch those ads, don't listen to those ads. They're horrible. Those guys are gonna steal your money. But
Yeah, no, it's a fun, like, because it's sort of YouTube is a little bit more about like there's always that SEO element I think in creating content online, but I think YouTube does allow, like you can just sort of focus on the content if you want. I mean, I think ultimately you want to really think about like creating content, promoting and marketing it, and then also like some of the SEO side, right? So it is a little more complex, right, than just recording a video, putting it out there. But I do think that, like you said, right, there's like a lot of passive income opportunity. I mean, the challenge I think with YouTube is that a lot of creators get into this and sort of they're covering the news cycle. News videos are not evergreen, right? So if you're covering what's going on, like, hey, DoorDash just released, or DoorDash just changed. Well, maybe that's not a good example, but like certain videos, like usually more of the news variety where like people don't care about news after 1, 2, 3 weeks. Like a lot of the videos on our channel that make us money are more evergreen tutorials. Like app tutorials are a big thing we do. Also, like more evergreen, like driving tips, strategies, how much money I made, how much money can you make driving for Uber in 2021? That's kind of like a boring generic title and keyword, but like content that's of that variety. So that's sort of my advice, is that you kind of want to make a mix of evergreen stuff and balance that with also like, pulse of the community, like what's happening, what's going on, reaction, news. Because if you sort of do one or the too much of one or the other, it's kind of hard to keep growing and also building a longer term sustainable business too.
yeah, I try to throw in a new tips video like every 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
But I take great
And
pride in saying that if you type in DoorDash tips on Google, I've been popping up as the #1 search thing for the last 2 years.
nice. Well, so that's a good one, right? And then I mean that's what's cool too about YouTube is, like usually they give you a little credit too. Like if you're ranking for that DoorDash tips, then every year you can start releasing, DoorDash tips for 2022 and kind of updating that video, and they sort of give you a little credit for having that original spot. So I think that there's definitely, there's still like an element of playing the game there. But I mean, I remember like especially I'd be cranking out videos in the early days, like a lot of like, I would go out driving for Uber, all these different situations would happen, and then I would do a video about it, and they weren't like super sexy topics. It was like, how to handle a passenger who wants to bring a beer into your car, like not
Jeez.
super sexy, but it was like an issue that a lot of people were having and that I was having myself as a driver. And so I knew that if I was having this issue, probably other people were. And so it's not like a sexy, like when I would post a video like that, like basically no one would really watch it. But over time, in Google and on YouTube, people would
Yep.
start finding that video. And some of those videos have sort of been like our longest, they've had like a good run. They've been evergreen. Some of those are like still getting views today, right? Because like that topic applied 7 years ago and it's exactly the same today, the answer to that question.
Yep, I agree. It's kind of like you're planting different seeds all over the place. And
Yeah.
like, I'm going to plant this one over here. I know it's going to take forever to grow, but eventually it will. And those are
It's going
those
to be
two
a big
seeds.
redwood and it's going to last for, 1, 2, 300 years. Yeah. I like that analogy a lot.
Yeah. Like my Postmates cheat codes video that I made 4 years ago is still
Yeah.
paying me $100 a month. I'm like,
There you go. That's a good one.
that was the one video that I was like, these extreme sports videos don't pay at all, but then these Postmates videos paying a bunch of money. I'm just gonna go
Yeah.
full on Postmates on everyone.
Yeah, and now I noticed that a lot of, especially in the past year or two, I've seen a lot more kind of reaction videos to news, especially on the Uber and Lyft side. There are a lot of reaction videos to like passengers behaving badly, and these can like rack up millions of views, but the CPMS are just like crazy low. So that's like basically what they pay you per what YouTube pays you for 1,000 views, and it's anywhere from like $1, $2, $3 range. And then like on the finance videos, like what you were talking about, or even some of the like driving for DoorDash type videos, like you get paid a CPM from YouTube more in like the $10 to $15 range. So if you have a video that does 10,000 views, that's $150 at a $15 CPM. At a $3 CPM, that's only $3 or $30, right? And so
Yeah.
you really need like 5 times the views on sort of like a video that advertisers care less about, right? So you would need 50,000 views on like more of a kind of reaction to bad
Yeah.
passengers behaving badly versus only 10,000 views on something that's more like in-depth detail type earnings type content.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've noticed I should probably try not to pay attention to the CPM and stuff because it goes up
Yeah.
and down. Like 2 months ago, I made $2,500, and then this last month it dropped all the way down to like 1,600 with the
Yeah.
same view count, and I was like, "What? I don't get it."
Yeah.
And then it went
So
back
I
up.
guess what I would say is like typically ad revenue, like just from generic from like YouTube and I mean, even like on my blog, we've got a bunch of ads. Unless you've got like millions of subscribers, the ad revenue should be you want it to kind of be like a small percent of your revenue as possible. If you got a million subscribers, you can release a video, it gets a million views, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll make a lot of money off of that. But for like anyone in the kind of 1 to 200,000 subscribers or less, like where you can still build a really good and successful business, there's a lot more opportunity with like affiliate stuff, launching your own products and services like courses, doing a sponsored post if that's your thing. But that's sort of more I think you can command a lot more dollars that way for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you're making me want to release a course or something. That's a good idea.
We'll talk about that offline. We've got some ideas we can share.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. But I think that touches on basically everything I wanted to talk to you about. Any last things that you wanted to say or anything we missed on?
No, I mean, I think that's it. We covered the DoorDash president interview. We talked a little Bentley.
Family.
What else? What else did we want to talk about? Hidden tips. Do we want to get into that, or we sort of covered that? Kind of, right? Not really.
I think I mean, do you like I mean, I get what DoorDash is doing, and I've said it before. I get what they're doing. They're trying to
Yeah,
avoid people cherry picking like me. But for me, I kind of have to cherry pick. Like I'm in a
yeah,
hotel room. I can't just go to my car and take an order. I have
yeah.
to walk, I want to say half a mile to my car
Mm.
just to get into my car and then go. So like that first order, I have to cherry pick for it. Otherwise, can't start off with a $5 order.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
I think the one perspective that I would add that I think is interesting is, since I'm coming more from the Uber and Lyft world, where you kind of mentioned earlier yourself, right? Like you actually now, in California is a little different. They've been changing the rules, but for the most part, as an Uber and Lyft driver, you don't know how much you're going to make. You don't know where the passenger is going until you get there, swipe to start the trip, and they get in your car. And at that point, you kind of have to do the trip, right? Because they're
Ooh.
sitting in your car, right? And so that's pretty brutal. And so we've always, it's always been an issue for drivers when they do send you a short trip, 2 miles or less, and you get a minimum fare, you only make like $2.75, for example, here in LA on a minimum fare that might be like anywhere 2 miles or less, right? And so those are kind of like income killers, but you can't really do much about it, right? That's just, I mean, we complain about it, and I think it's kind of bullshit. But that was sort of always one of the reasons why, hey, I'm okay with, something like New York City has a minimum wage for Uber and Lyft drivers, right? Because if they're going to force you to take like those shitty trips, there should be like a base pay on average per hour, right? And so I don't like the idea of the company like forcing you to take those short trips, but I do think with DoorDash and these, Uber Eats, right? And I think Grubhub is actually going to be, I saw them testing this new Model 2 where they're going to show you more information. I think that you actually do see that. So I'm like a little bit more torn on I mean, the hidden tips, I think is pretty clearly like that's bullshit. I think they should be, if they're going to if they're going to give you the information, they got to give it all to you.
Mhm.
But I think just like on low orders in general, like I feel like maybe delivery drivers don't even know how good they have it, right? Like you do know that it's a $3 order, right? You should be declining those left and right. And that's why I don't like the hidden tips, right? Because if it's a $3 order with the possibility of a hidden tip, that changes it. But if it's just a $3 order, it's like just ignore it and move on. I mean, like we don't need to babysit people here. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, I agree. I just feel bad for the people that don't understand and they're just taking all the low orders because they're like, my acceptance
But I
rate
mean,
needs to
how
be
many?
90.
Yeah, I like this video that Pedro did, and he talked about, he like there's a lot of immigrant couriers out there. People are English as second language, and so they may not understand. And I thought that was a good point. I started thinking about it a little more though. I mean, how many orders do you need to take right before you realize, like, hey, I didn't make, whether you speak English, Spanish, or a different language, like you only need to take a few of those to know, like, wow, that was a really shit order. I'm not going to do that again. I said every time I see $3 come in, I'm going to ignore that. I think the hidden tips are a little trickier, and it's something that like all the gig companies are trying to balance right now, where like they want to give enough information to the courier or to the driver because you're an independent contractor, so you should know how much you're going to get paid, where you're going. Like I think a lot of people, almost everyone agrees that you should be getting that information, but I feel like it's like a small number of people who kind of then abuse that, and they, let's say, ignore 99 trips just to get that one, $50 or $100 order. And so it's sort of like screws everyone else order and so that over. So that's where I sort of like, maybe if there's like a balance, right? Like on Uber, what they did in California is they still show you the destination, but you have to accept like 5 out of the last 10 trips to still see the destination, right? So as long as you're kind of not abusing the system, then they'll give you all the information. And I don't know if that's like the perfect system, but I like something that's a little bit more of a balance where like, the people who are abusing and cherry picking every single trip, like if you have to do it here and there, like right, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're just sitting there waiting for like the best trips and like forcing other drivers to take the shittiest ones, then it's kind of unfair. And so I think something that's like a compromise like that might be the best option going forward.
Yeah. Again, I do get it. They are, of course, trying to prevent it, and it's better for their business. It makes more sense. It
Yeah.
just sucks. But I mean, you're always going to get thrown curveballs. So you got to figure
Yeah,
out a
well,
way around this
and
curveball.
that's sort of like, I think it's perfect full circle. We talked about earlier, right? Like these companies have their own incentives and they aren't looking out for your best interest. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't cherry pick these orders. Like when I go out, I cherry pick the shit out of every order. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is still a game, right? That, like you want the most profitable trips and you want to find them. And, I don't want, like I just don't like when the system is like taking advantage of people. And so as long as it's not taking advantage of people, then I'm okay with it. But at the same time, I mean, I've done many videos about, like how to, basically avoid minimum fares, like kind of go offline if you're in a busy bar area, for example, and then drive away. And, then you won't get those like short minimum fare bar trips. Right. And so I think the same thing like with DoorDash, right? Like people are obviously using the Para app. Like I think, that's one where it's like a little more borderline, but I feel like, if I was door dashing every day, it'd be pretty tough for me not to use that because it's a tool that's available at my disposal, right? If DoorDash didn't, they obviously don't want dashers to have that info since they're not providing it. But at the same time, if there's a tool out there that gives me that information that helps me make more money, it's going to be pretty hard for me personally not to take advantage of it.
Yeah. You think DoorDash knows about the Par app?
So actually, we wrote an article about the Para app. I reached out to DoorDash, like their press team, and asked them about the Para app, and they kind of basically told me on background, which means like don't quote me, but you can say our answer. And they said that they weren't aware of it, basically, but they're sort of like keeping an eye on things, basically. So I don't know whether you believe them or not, but I mean, also think about like they've got 2 million dashers, and maybe Para app has tens of thousands of users and growing pretty quickly. But I imagine at a certain point, DoorDash will definitely become aware of it. And I would just say, you think about it, right? Like obviously they're not providing that information to dashers. You can, most people I think that's kind of bullshit and don't agree with that. And me too, and you too, I think. But at the same time, right, like they're not providing that information to dashers for whatever reasons they have. So if you're using some app that's then giving you that information, they're probably not going to like it, right? Like doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure
Yeah.
out that one. So you can imagine at a certain point, if too many, or if 1 million of the 2 million dashers start using it, I'm sure that they'll look to crack down. I don't think that they'll deactivate drivers for it. I know you had a good video on this. Like I don't think I've seen any evidence of anyone actually being deactivated yet for using the PAR app. But if this is your full-time income and full-time gig and you're taking this risk, you got to understand, like if you get deactivated, it shouldn't be like a complete shocker, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. And yeah, I don't know how the tech stuff works. So I don't know how they, like, if DoorDash does figure it out and they're like, yeah, let's get rid of this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how all that stuff works. Like, I don't even know how they're doing this in the first place. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
I
I
don't
don't
really
know.
know either, but it might be a good video for me to you or I to figure that out because it's kind of interesting. But there's been an app in the past that's still around today, but there was an app called Maestro that allowed you, it was an Android app. It worked through the accessibility option on Android, and it basically allowed you to automatically go online with both Uber and Lyft, accept jobs. And this is all hands free. It would accept jobs based on certain parameters that you set and then log you off the other app. So it sort of allowed you to dual app without ever touching your phone. And it was pretty cool, super popular with drivers. I think they got up to like 8,000 users that were paying them, I want to say like 10 or 15 bucks a month, which is pretty nuts.
Yeah.
That's kind of like how valuable the app was. And Lyft specifically started updating their driver app to target Maestro, and they would like change things in the code that would then break the Maestro app. And it was kind of like this big cat and mouse. And eventually the company Maestro sort of went under and it got bought by a new owner. And I think they got it up and running again, but the damage was done. And, I think most of those 8,000 users, obviously, they weren't paying for the app once it stopped working. So I'm sure if DoorDash, if it became a problem, they wanted to target the app, that would probably be more their approach on the tech side versus just deactivating a bunch of dashers.
Yeah. I really don't think they would deactivate people. And yeah, when it comes to the hidden tips, like I get it. And no matter what, I would still recommend to everyone to become at least a dasher. So in case your income just
Yeah.
blows up and you don't have it anymore, like you can always DoorDash, and it's
Yep.
better than having no options,
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually why, I love the gig economy in general. Like I literally tell everyone, I think they should be at least signed up for one app, whether it's Uber and Lyft or DoorDash and Postmates, because I mean, there really isn't a single job in the world where you can literally flip your app open, go do a trip or a delivery or multiple, and then cash out that money, either instantly or at the end of the day or very quickly for a lot of these services. And so I think in that respect, it's pretty cool. And then I think the other like last piece that ties into all of this is just make sure you're diversifying across the apps. Like if you are going to be relying on this for part-time or full-time income, you definitely want, DoorDash and another delivery app, or DoorDash and even Uber or Lyft, right? Just so that if something happens with DoorDash, you get deactivated for using the Para app, or, you get temporarily deactivated on Uber for expired license or background check. You've got another option so that, you always have that ability to earn if you need it.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And I think that's a good note to end on. So
Definitely.
thank you for coming on. If you guys haven't yet, check out Harry's channel. It's called The Rideshare Guy. I think you got what, 90,000
I
subscribers.
think
So
we're up to 95. We're closing in on 100. So I'm trying to think of creative ideas for our 100,000 subscriber party. So
so
if you got
clearly
any,
you're
let me
doing
know.
something right. Cool. Thanks for coming on. And if you guys haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. Also check out Harry's channel. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.